So let's talk about how the first season of A Different World is the worst season of the series. Of course, this show is iconic for many reasons, but the first season didn't really contribute to what made the series funny, memorable, or iconic, what made the show happen in the later seasons. The first season was just boring and mundane, and so was Denise Huxtable. Like, the first season was centered around Denise navigating through her freshman year. We seen Denise transitioning to adulthood, dealing with money problems and dating, which are all realistic for students, but she just couldn't carry the show. Denise wasn't even the most interesting Cosby kid, so it was no surprise that centering a show around that character didn't really work, and she was pretty much upstaged by the supporting cast members. Though Whitley was the antagonist, her over-the-top bougie Southern Belle attitude stole the spotlight. She was the breakout star of the season, and this is evident because she, along with Dwayne, became the main characters. Initially, Dwayne was very much nerdy and annoying but served as the comedic relief, though the first season didn't have much comedy. And even Maggie, with her quirky, bubbly personality, was more interesting than Denise. Overall, the writing and the development of Denise was lackluster, and that's why the character got upstaged. Not only was the writing lacking, but the show really didn't have an identity of its own. Like, the entire first season felt like a less interesting version of The Cosby Show, and at times the Cosby influence was a bit overwhelming because they took the same elements of The Cosby Show and applied it to what was supposed to be not just a college experience, but an HBCU experience, and it didn't work out. Susan Fields, a staff writer and ex-producer, actually had this to say: "We tried to follow the Cosby model, pretend it's timeless, make no reference to current events, make no reference to race, and we were under orders from NBC to stay away from anything academic. So we had a show about a black college that wasn't about college and couldn't be black." And the first season didn't really feel like an HBCU, though it was a mostly black cast. Eventually the show started to feel like an HBCU when Debbie Allen came in. She really integrated a lot of things from Howard and Spelman into the show, but the start of the show was kinda goofy, like they had an entire episode about taking care of an egg. At the time, critics described the show as bland and unfunny, awful, and a big yawn. Despite this, it still did well in ratings and won the award for Favorite New TV Comedy Show.
On behalf of the cast and the staff of A Different World, we accept this award with great love and great respect. We thank the people for allowing us this opportunity to thank them.
The show was mostly successful because it was a spin-off and aired directly after The Cosby Show, and A Different World was actually the #2 show on television at the time. Honestly, the best thing that happened for the show was Lisa Bonet getting kicked off and Debbie Allen taking over the show. She completely transformed it. All the reasons why people love the show happened in season 2 through 6. From once we started to see characters in the classroom, and some of the best moments came from those classroom scenes. It was educational and introduced people to new topics. So when Debbie Allen took over, they weren't afraid to go there. They talked about social and political issues. And I'm glad they included that because college is a time where people start to form their own political identities. College is actually a place where many political and social movements have started, such as the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, anti-war movements, and the student debt protests, and the list goes on. So it's important to include these topics in a show that is supposed to reflect the college experience. This show was great because they did what The Cosby Show never did, which was talk about racism, date rape, apartheid, LA riots, STDs, and the list goes on. I mean, again, they weren't afraid to go there, and this show was probably one of the first shows to integrate all these topics, so essentially Debbie Allen is brilliant. The characters got increasingly diverse as the show continued. They introduced more interesting characters such as Ron. Kim and Freddie were great additions. They both really balanced out the extraness of Willie and brought more representation to the show, plus everyone had good character development. Even in the later season, with the introduction of the new generation, we see more diverse characters. The first season was very dull and without direction. Even the cast of the show admit that they really didn't care for the first season.
Eggs, about pig noses, about stuff that had no connection really to college.
We needed some help. I thought the first season we were lost.
We could have been, like I said, 4 white kids from Kansas. There was no ethnicity to it at all.
Some of the stories we were asked to do were to be kind, light.
So I agree with the cast. The first season lacked a lot of substance, but I'll say regardless of that, the first season still set the foundation for what would become one of the best sitcoms of all time. The effect of the show alone was enough to compensate for that first season.